I want to talk today about pronunciation in the English language of foreign words which have recently made their way into use in the English language. Because there often seems to be a lot of contention around these sorts of words and the correct way to pronounce them. Specifically, you see this a lot with East Asian words, and those I'm going to be using two examples from East Asian cultures to talk about this. Now, the first one, I'll just get into the example, is the Vietnamese soup. You could probably guess I was going to talk about this, pho, which is P-H-O. That's how it's spelled. And of course, some people insist that you should pronounce it. The correct way to pronounce it is pho, like F-U-H. And I basically just want to say that this entire, pho versus pho dichotomy is totally ridiculous. And I want to make the case that the objectively correct way in English to pronounce it is pho, pronounced the same way as F-A-U-X. And there's a few reasons for this. One, if you ask, the most correct way, I guess you could argue, to pronounce it outside of any particular language is, I guess, to ask a Vietnamese person how they would pronounce it. And this is the first wrinkle you hit in this debate. It's if you ask them, a Vietnamese person, they would say, well, it's pho, pho. It's something like, it's literally a sound I can't even make, and that's kind of the point. They literally have sounds in the Vietnamese language that we do not have in the English language. And it is difficult then for an English speaker, a native English speaker, to make those sounds. Sometimes pretty much impossible without actually training to do so. So basically you have these sounds that in order to pronounce it correctly, we would need to use, but that are impossible for us to use. So you pretty much need to come to an approximation. And the tools that you have to do that are the letters of the English alphabet, of the Latin alphabet. So the first guy who wrote down the name of this soup, or at least the guy who wrote down the name that stuck, he decided on PHO. He said, this isn't totally correct, but it's an approximation, and I think this is what we should call this thing. And that's another point. We shouldn't have all these different pronunciations for any word, because insofar as the purpose of language is to communicate clearly ideas to others, it helps to pronounce things all the same. If we pronounced everything differently, then we'd be speaking different languages. Which, interestingly, that's how China used to do it. That's actually the reason for the Chinese character system. It's so that they could write one language, or they could write one script, and it would actually be readable in multiple languages. So you would have the kingdom, whatever the king needed to communicate to all of his different lands. Well, they spoke different languages over here, but he could actually just write out one thing, and they would read it. Now, if two people from different parts of China read it, it would sound entirely differently, but they're using the same script. So it's interesting. It's obviously today sort of cumbersome. I would argue leads to less creativity in their writing. But anyways, back then, yeah, that was basically the original purpose it served. Multiple languages with one script. Kind of cool. But anyways, back to the faux debate. So, yeah, there's basically no objectively correct approximation, but once we choose an approximation, we should all use that in order to communicate clearly. And the one that the spelling that we chose was PHO, which in English, according to the rules of English, is pronounced pho. That to me makes it objectively correct. And again, you literally cannot get better, because we will only ever have approximations in the English language. So yeah, I guess that's sort of the main point surrounding pho. And another interesting side note, I think people only really insist, because this whole thing is brought up because there's always that pedant if you're going out to have pho with somebody. There's always that pedant who insists on pronouncing it the correct way, which is they say pho. And I think this instinct to do this, to insist that they are pronouncing it correctly, comes from this broader societal move we've been seeing in the past, at least 15 years, where having this connection to something that is, either non-American, non-European, I would say more broadly non-white, having this connection to that thing is seen as a virtue almost. Not just a good thing, but elevated beyond to, I would say, a virtue. So people feel that, if they have even this small connection to, I guess, Vietnam, this small cultural connection, knowing how to say this one word correctly, that they can actually hold that above somebody, and makes them superior in a way, at least in this modern world where we have this context. So I think that's where the motivation comes from. So yeah, I mean that, and just the fact that we always have to have this 30-second conversation anytime I'm trying to go eat noodles with someone. That's kind of the motivation for wanting to talk about this. So yeah, there's no correct way. There's no correct way that we can get the 100% correct pronunciation in the Vietnamese language, because we cannot make those sounds in English. So we have to approximate. The one that stuck is PHO. Therefore, we should all go with that in order to communicate clearly. And by the way, an annoying thing that strikes me is when I was Googling around about what do people on the internet think is the correct way to pronounce this. All the people who say that the correct way is pho when they're doing it in written word, they have to type out, well, actually the correct way to pronounce it is, quotes, FUH. So the fact that they have to spell it differently in order to get you to pronounce it, quote unquote, correctly, to me just totally proves that they're talking out their ass. They have no idea. They have no standing. They have no linguistic backing that makes them correct. Because if I said, okay, well, yeah, it's spelt DOG, but you pronounce it CAT, like that would just make me seem insane, right? Yeah, I mean, those are basically the main points I wanted to make, but this applies to a lot of words. Again, like I said, mostly from East Asia, because you have this problem where they have a different script than us, so people needed to approximate, and then the approximation is never satisfactory for the pedants and the people who want to feel culturally superior to you because they're connected to this exotic thing that, you don't know about, you basically, you stupid white person, right? So this applies. Another big one you may have heard is, say you wanted to get into Eastern spiritualism and you really like the yin-yang symbol. So you get into this, spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, called Taoism. Now, it's spelt in the English language Tao, but if you have talked to anybody who's into this, you'll know that they will pedantically insist that it is pronounced Taoism with the D, despite being spelled with a T, of course. And all the same arguments apply. You should basically just ask these kinds of people, well, okay, how do you spell it in Chinese? How do you spell Taoism in Chinese? Well, it kind of looks like this. Like, it's they use the symbol for road, and it's a picture. Okay, so how do you translate that to English? Some guy a long time ago, he asked a Chinese person, how do you pronounce this thing? Or he heard them talking about it, and they said something like Tao. I can't make the sound very well because I'm an English speaker, but if you listen to it on like a Google Translate, it's some sort of blend between a T and a D sound, a semi-soft Tao, something like that. So this guy said, okay, I'm going to put T because that's the best approximation, and we should all go forward using that so we can all be mutually intelligible to each other when speaking English. And yet people, of course, insist on being pedants, and you have the exact same issues that you have when you're trying to just eat some Vietnamese noodles. Yeah. So I suppose that's all I had to say about that. Don't be a pedant. Don't be annoying. We know that not every word can be pronounced correctly in every single other language, so we need to use approximations. And by the way, if you ask a non-English speaker to say English words, they will butcher the crap out of them. I mean, you don't even have to go to China, but go to France, and you speak French so disgusting, I cannot listen. You just mispronounce every word in that single fucking sentence, Frenchie. But again, I think basically it's not necessarily all racially motivated, but it's definitely an attack on a power structure. They view things like whiteness, but also the English language. They view them as having hegemony in the world. So therefore, those are the things they need to attack. French is no longer the lingua franca, so they would never attack a French-speaking person, right? It's just these things which have hegemony. It's attacking power structures. This is anyways. these are just side effects of the broader cultural movements of the past 20 years, the ones that they've been pushing for a much longer time than that. But it just happened to touch upon an area that I'm a little interested in, which is linguistics. And, you know, I just wanted to talk about how it's pronounced pho, and it's good. And I don't want to hear anyone else tell me that it's pho, because it's frankly really just pedantic. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.